Oh, the video's just stopped, hasn't it? Right, okay, good morning. Welcome back to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams. This is my twice weekly webcast. We're live today with our show. It's show number 416, and it's Sunday, 31st of March, Easter Sunday. So, welcome to you all. Got a fairly strong show for you today. We've got stories about riders in Punjab who have been urged to install what is described as a wire antenna to counter the threat of being garroted by kite strings strewn across the roads. A weird and very dangerous problem that they have in India. MAG are encouraging the riders to quiz police and crime commissioners candidates on bike theft in advance of the upcoming elections. The Ashford Classic Bike Show is on tomorrow. Looks like, unfortunately, it's going to be raining for that, but I think it is indoors. Pierer Mobility, now they have gained a majority stake in MV Agusta, which is quite an interesting move, and Honda are releasing a new 300cc adventure bike. I don't know if it's coming here, though. If you want range, though, on your electric motorcycle, then a new Thai brand, Felo, is showing off a heavyweight touring bike. Stay tuned to find out how far that will go on a charge. And then finally, in the in-depth section today, it's Easter. So naturally, of course, it's time for the latest round of road crimes units out on active patrol, supposedly engaging with bikers. So we'll have a talk about some thoughts on those interventions, how that dovetails into a new scheme called Project Apex, which is aimed at young riders, and also some words from the National Motorcycle Council about the need to reform training. We'll try and put all that together into a cohesive story. So stay tuned, that will be at the end of the show. So settle yourselves down with a brew and a biscuit, and don't forget, if you can't catch these live, they do go out. They'll be recorded. Now, who is here this morning? Paul is. Good morning to you, Paul. Nice to see you. Right, so let's get on with the show. Now, if you have been wondering where I was for the last 3 weeks or so, the answer is that after taking a short holiday break back in February, I had to make an unscheduled trip to Los Angeles earlier this month for a family funeral. So not the best reason to visit the City of the Angels, it has to be said, and matters haven't been improved either, because I got back on Wednesday evening and only to hear that a close friend had passed away in Devon that night. So that's another funeral I've got to attend in the next few days. But Elevenses back this morning. The content of the show, as I said, listed for you there, and hopefully I'll be able to continue to broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube on Sundays and Wednesdays without too many more interruptions. And I haven't forgotten the promise to run the fitness items either. I meant to record those while I was away, but I just didn't get time, I'm afraid. So I will get those finished. There'll be a series of short specials going up in the next few weeks. Right, okay, so the other news is that obviously the trip put back my on-road training. I normally launch that mid-March, but I've been away. But that is now back available, my unique brand of on-road training. What I try to focus on is delivering genuine survival skills for riders. It's not just technical competence or the ability to quote motorcycle roadcraft from cover to cover that I'm interested in. You can choose between courses that focus on delivering sort of confidence to a newer rider, or I can fix riding issues for riders who have a specific problem that they know about, or you can simply take a course and gain the necessary knowledge and skills, cope with everything from riding twisty rural roads with my performance courses and the skills to deal with city centre commuting, my urban survival courses. What you won't get with survival skills is a one-size-fits-all course with a standard test at the end of it. You will get a session that's tailored to your wants and your needs rather than something standardized. You can choose anything from a 1 to a 4-day course, depending on your budget and what you actually want to learn about. Or you can even do some short 2-hour sessions on specific topics. Don't forget, these courses all come with an online briefing, so you get an extra hour or so online before we head out on the road, and you can meet me at some convenient starting points around London. Most of them are on the M25, so very easy to get to whether you're in the town or outside. If you are more central, I actually have a very challenging route leading out of northwest London from the North Circular Road at Brent Cross, and that is quite a fun one. Actually, it gets some surprising mix of roads in. So if you want to take your riding above and beyond the regular advanced standard, do drop me a line. And finally, before I look at the weather, look out yourselves for some Easter Madness special offers which are going out over the weekend break on my Facebook and my coffee pages, so that is something to look forward to. Now, what's with us for the weather? Well, the bad news is that it is not looking too great. As we move from March to April, there's still plenty of rain around because the UK is currently sitting pretty squarely under a persistent low pressure area, and this is being locked in place by a big loop in the jet stream, so it's simply not going to move over the next few days. So whilst today started with some sunny spells, already here in London it's clouded over, and the cloud will continue to build from the east through the afternoon. Wind and heavy rain is going to spread from the southeast of England across much of the rest of England and Wales overnight. On Monday, this heavy rain will slowly push northwards towards southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. It will remain brighter and drier in the northwest, so if you're up there you might get a chance of doing some Easter Monday riding. Tuesday starts dry, cool and cloudy with a few light showers to the north, but further outbreaks of wind and rain will push north back into England and Wales during the course of the day, and the unsettled conditions remain into the second half of the week. Right, okay, so on with some news. Now, in the Indian state of Punjab in India, kite flying is a popular sport. Now, unfortunately, there is also a serious problem of motorcyclists being injured or even killed by kite strings that get loose somehow and end up getting caught across roads. Now, this is an issue that I have reported on in ELEVENSES before, and last time, I guess it was probably a couple of years ago now, but the Punjab government at that time was attempting to implement a ban on kite flying on the one hand, and on the second hand to prevent the import of the illegal nylon strings which are causing the problems. And it seems both measures have failed. So the latest plan is to require motorcyclists to protect themselves, and they're going to be doing this by installing what are being described as flexible antenna wires on their bikes to act as protection. Now, the idea is that the antenna will sit in front of the rider, either side of the bike basically, and what will happen then is if a kite string hits these, it will be flipped over the rider's head. That's the theory anyway. Now, this follows similar action which apparently was taken in Rawalpindi in 2021, where they issued an advisory for motorcyclists to install these steel safety wires on their bikes. The Punjab have now launched a similar campaign, but the problem is that these antennae, they screw into the mounting point, which is already being used by the rear view mirror. So you have to take the mirror off to get these wires in place. And there are reasonable concerns that the absence of mirrors will actually make the motorcyclist more vulnerable, of course, to road traffic collisions. Now, likewise, the Punjab government has apparently decided to provide police and rescue motorcycles with what are described as regular windshields, and they are actually recommending that similar screens should be installed on ordinary motorcycles. So an extraordinary state of affairs out there in northwest India. Okay, on to two more very quick items. Now, firstly, the Motorcycle Action Group, MAG, has announced two initiatives in its Fight Motorcycle Theft campaign. The first is to encourage riders to get involved in the Police and Crime Commissioner elections, which are taking place in May. And the group is itself pressing the candidates to make their views known on bike theft. So if you want to ask your own commissioner how they're going to deal with bike theft, go ahead and do it. And hopefully we'll get some answers and some plans which go beyond the usual platitudes. I think, the sort of lock it or lose it line. Second thing, as I said, tomorrow's Easter Monday, and it's time for the Ashford Classic Motorcycle Show, which promises, I'm told, to host classic, vintage and veteran machinery at the show. Now, it's based at the Ashford Livestock Market, and that's the Ashford in Kent, by the way, not the one in Middlesex. So if you are interested in going there tomorrow, don't head off in the wrong direction. Lots of couriers back in the day when I was dashing around London delivering parcels, it was a common mistake to end up in Middlesex rather than Kent. Right, okay, so back in the 80s, you probably remember the Italian-based Cagiva Group, and at the time they seemed to own sort of half the motorcycle brands in Italy. They actually owned who they bought from Harley Davidson. They owned Ducati, they owned Moto Morini, they owned MV Agusta, and they also, of course, took control of the Finnish Husqvarna brand. Now, Cagiva was founded in the late 1970s, but by the mid-1990s, things weren't looking so good, and the company was actually restructuring under the MV Agusta name. And they were selling off some of the brand name assets. Now, they passed through several owners, including, rather bizarrely, Harley Davidson, and the official sort of the old Cagiva outfit was officially declared dead by 2012, but the MV name lived on. Now, having bought MV, Harley Davidson then sold MV back to the Castiglione family, the ones who launched Cagiva in the first place, for the grand sum of €1. And although production relaunched, the new company really couldn't scale up numbers to make the business profitable. Now, probably sparked by the Volkswagen Audi Group's investment in Ducati, Mercedes AMG, they pumped cash into MV, but that only lasted 2 years before the German automaker, they divested their interest in MV, and the company went into bankruptcy protection, which allowed them to continue operating but protected them from creditors asking for their money back, basically. They scaled back production. They did continue to sell limited numbers of MVs. Now, fast forward to 2017, and this is where the Russian Black Ocean Investment Group, led by Timur Sardarov, who turns out to be a buddy of Vladimir Putin, apparently, they invested in MV. And that allowed MV to buy back the remaining shares that Mercedes still held in the MV company. But it wasn't until 2022 when the Pierer Group took a 25% stake in the company with a focus on getting parts production and distribution sorted out that MV finally seemed to be on a sound footing. So where are we now? Well, you probably wonder why we're getting a history lesson there, but it's because the Austria-based Pierer Mobility Group, they've just upped their stake in MV Agusta to 50.1%. Thus, they are taking control of the company. They're adding it to their portfolio of motorcycle brands, which includes, of course, KTM, Gas, the suspension maker, White Power, and also Husqvarna, who you may remember from that explanation just a moment ago, were once owned by Cagiva themselves. Now, the Pierer Group had apparently planned this move for 2025, but decided to take control a year earlier. The statement says the call option granted to KTM AG on the basis of the annual financial statements will now be exercised prematurely, and KTM will take over the industrial management of MV Agusta. The press release says that the aim is to up production to around 10,000 units from the existing MV Agusta factory in Varese in Italy, and then to extend with new facilities. There's no word on where that might be, but you may remember that MV and Pierer also have a link with CF Moto, so the Chinese manufacturer. So you can make your own guesses about what that might involve. No 2024 models were announced at the shows last year. So just where is it that MV Agusta's rather pricey bikes fit into the Pierer Mobility portfolio? Well, the budget KTM and Husqvarna models are built in India and China. The more mid-range KTM bikes being produced in Austria. So presumably, adding MV Agusta to their portfolio will allow them to take on the sort of premium end of the market, which is currently targeted by the likes of Ducati. That would be my guess anyway. The question is, of course, can Pierer fulfill their vision of increased sales into what is actually a strictly limited market? And in the next show, I'll also be looking at Pierer's financials, which haven't been too good for the last year. Right, okay, so don't forget, if you are enjoying the show, do subscribe, do press the like button. It only takes a moment of your time to do this, but it really does help me, because the like on the individual shows, the subscription to the channels, is what helps other motorcyclists discover my content. So please take a moment, just press those buttons whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, just to give me a like and to subscribe. Thank you in advance for your help on that. Right, okay, so on with a new motorcycle story. Here we go. Let's have a look at this one then. I'll just actually read the comments. I've got Aaron says good morning, and he offers condolences. Thanks, Aaron. Richard says good morning, and Sue's here also saying good morning. So good morning to all of you. And yeah, that's nice to see you all there. Right, so on with the story about the new Honda. Now, what you're looking at there is a rather interesting, I think, baby adventure bike. I always think that the big machines get all the press footage, and we often overlook the small and interesting machines that in fact turn out to be the bigger sellers in many cases. So this is the new Sahara 300. It's said to plug a gap in the small displacement adventure bike market, and it's aimed at riders who are new to off-road riding and who are not, entirely unsurprisingly, perhaps intimidated by the sort of full-size adventure bikes that tend to dominate the market. They're not only big in cc's, they're big in size and big in weight. Now, I'll say right off that I don't know if this machine is going to make it to the UK, but as well as the South American and the Asian market, it does seem it's headed to the US, where there's likely to be enough of demand for a machine here with it's basically just got enough get up and go to cope with the sort of highway use that you need to get you to an off-road area where you can go and play. And if you are out there and you're a relative off-road novice, the bike will be light and relatively easy to manage. It's a pretty featherweight, 150 kilograms, around 330 pounds. And that makes it 25 kilograms lighter than the sort of Kawasaki Versys X300, which is a sort of pretty much a direct competitor, though that is a twin cylinder machine, and it does have the advantage of making around 29 kilowatts or 39 horsepower. Now, if you want to look at the background for this bike, it's based on a Brazilian-built single-cylinder dual-sport motorbike, which is known as the XRE 300. Now, this machine was actually designed with urban riders in mind, but it turned out to be equally capable of handling mild trails, so it became a top option in South America for people living in rural areas too. In fact, it was so competent as a motorcycle, the machine has actually been adopted by the Brazilian Army's motorized infantry brigades and the Colombian police. So the new Sahara 300 you can see here is an update with an improved 293 single overhead cam air-cooled engine, which drops the XRE 300's double overhead cam configuration. The engine's output is pretty modest, 18.5 kilowatts or 25 horsepower, 7,500 RPM, so it's not particularly revvy motor, and it gets 20 pound-feet of torque at 6,500 RPM. Now, interestingly, the bike can also run on full E100 fuel, so it will certainly cope with the E10 fuel that you find in petrol pumps here in the UK and also in the US. Now, the styling is borrowed from the newly updated CB500X. It gets 21-inch, 18-inch spoked wheels, dual-channel anti-lock brakes, preload adjustable rear shock, so no fancy damping. USB-C charger though, and full LED lighting, and you do get a LCD instrument cluster which gives you a gear indicator as well as a rev counter, fuel gauge, dual trips, and a clock. Additionally, the bike gets Honda's new brake alert feature, which basically turns on the hazard lights when you brake very hard. And the bike is due to appear in standard, rally and adventure trims. The base model is on sale in Brazil at the moment for the equivalent of around £4,300. So it will be interesting to see if that particular machine appears in the UK. Now, you want range from an electric motorcycle? Many people seem to think they don't go far enough. So the Thai motorcycle brand Felo aims to deliver the miles that people want. Now, Felo, they're owned by Smart Tech, and Smart Tech are a leader in Thailand's electric vehicle sector. And at the recent 45th Bangkok International Motor Show, the electric motorcycle spin-off Felo introduced us to the heavyweight 2's electric bike. Fairly unpalatable name, but and this is what it looks like. It's said to be a glimpse into the future of electric touring bikes. Let's just zoom in on that a little and show you exactly what it looks like. There we go. Get that in the middle of the screen there. Now, it boasts a top speed of 125 miles per hour, but also a claimed range of 450 miles on a charge, which is way beyond anything else is capable of. Now, that'll probably be a city range rather than a sort of an all-purpose mileage, so you can expect to knock some miles off that, but it's still way beyond anything else I've heard about. Now, it does get Type 2 rapid charging, where the claim is that you can boost the battery capacity from 20% to 80% in just 20 minutes. So basically just time to nip into a cafe and get a coffee. There's no word on the battery spec itself, but it must be at least double the sort of 14-15 kilowatt capacity that we see on something like the Zeros, for example, which give about 100-mile range. So I would imagine that you've probably got quite a lot of battery weight, and that probably explains the sort of grand tourer dimensions of the machine, which have rather more than a hint of the Goldwing about them, don't they? Just in case the bike's not heavy enough already, which I suspect it will be, no weight is quoted. 2's have fitted a 12-inch TFT dashboard, which is a central hub, they say, for smartphone connectivity and navigation, and you can play back your multimedia through a 6-channel surround sound speaker system. You can also opt for an 8-litre cool box that can be dropped into one of the panniers. So with all that weight in hand, that's probably why Felo claim that the 2's has safety features at the forefront of its design. There's a tyre pressure monitoring system as standard, and of course you get ABS and traction control. Now, Thailand itself ranks as one of the top 10 automobile manufacturers in the world, and it's also of course established as one of the world's largest producers of motorcycles, although currently much of the manufacturing is for offshore companies such as Triumph, Honda, Yamaha, BMW and Ducati. So the question is, of course, whether Felo are going to be able to launch themselves into the global market as a Thai company in their own right. So be interested to see what you think about that particular bike. Aaron says brake alert is a great feature for training. You can easily tell when a trainee is stopping near the threshold. Yeah, I guess it's slightly easier than having to listen for the squeal of tyres, which is what we used to have to do pre-ABS. Right, so on with the final section of the show, the in-depth item. Now, it's Easter, and so that means along with the bunnies, the chicks, and the chocolate eggs, it's time for the annual round of what many see as the Bash the Biker safety campaigns. For example, Cleveland police say they'll be patrolling in a bid to prevent motorcycle crashes, and Operation Darwin is now underway across North Wales. Now, the local police in the province are never backward in coming forward with the latest shock horror stats, implying more bikers are killing themselves and injuring themselves than ever before. And there are plenty of dire warnings at the road crimes unit. Whatever happened to road safety units? They'll be on active patrol across the region to engage with riders. Now, to be fair, Sergeant Jason Diamond, he's the operational lead for Operation Darwin. He has been quoted as saying, "We're not trying to stop motorcyclists from riding on the roads. We're trying to stop them from dying on them. Come here, ride safe, go home and repeat. Come here, ride dangerously, lose your license or your life. It's your choice." And he continued, "I understand that there are collisions where riders are not at fault, but if we can educate riders to lift observations, think about what may be around the next bend, have appropriate speed for hazards, then at least that will have a positive impact on reducing conflict with motorcycles." Sounds a bit like survival skills, really, doesn't it? And Sergeant Diamond also says that he can say without hesitation that drivers will be treated the same if they are unable to abide by the rules of the road. Now, this dovetails rather neatly into the National Motorcycle Council's reissued challenge to the government to undertake a fundamental review of the existing motorcycle licensing, testing and training regime. You may recall that the NMC is a sort of an umbrella body which includes the BMF, it includes the ACU, the Trail Riders Federation, I can't remember who else. There's a few other organisations in there. So basically, they are representing motorcyclists very indirectly through a number of interested bodies. They don't have direct representation from ordinary riders. You have to go through one of their other bodies. Now, the NMC released a sort of position paper in 2022 entitled "A Fresh Approach to the Motorcycle Licence," and it was based on the following principle, they say. Quote, "To make the licensing regime easier to understand and access while maintaining appropriate road safety standards in training." The NMC say they do not propose a dilution of standards, but it does propose the creation of a system which is more understandable with less cost, bureaucracy and repetition, whilst maintaining the UK's high training standards. Well, I was skeptical at the time, and I remain skeptical because I think that making the access easier with less cost, less bureaucracy, less repetition, whilst that's not necessarily a bad thing, there wasn't actually any suggestion that CBT should be beefed up. And at the end of the day, CBT is the bottom line for training. Now, if we're having the same old crashes every single year, and which is the reason, of course, we have these regular as clockwork police safety campaigns, one has to question whether the UK really does have high training standards. Now, we may have better results in terms of road safety than many other countries, but what's obvious is that we're not actually improving things. And although I'll add the caution that simple analyses rarely provide the full picture, the fact is the NMC does actually seem to tacitly agree that training is an issue, since their statement continues. "What is clear from a simple analysis of the headline safety statistics is that the current licensing regime is not fit for purpose. Rider deaths have risen since it was introduced between 2009 and 2013. So that's basically the triple tiered license system, if you exclude passing a test on a moped, which nobody bothers with. Now, that's okay as far as it goes, but the statement, of course, doesn't consider whether bike use has changed. And one thing that's blindingly obvious is that compared with the situation prior to the introduction of the tiered licenses, few young riders are actually taking the bike test under the current regime. Under the old system, they could take a test on a 125 and they were pretty keen to get rid of their L plates because they could jump onto a bigger 33 horsepower restricted motorcycle. Now, whilst learning on a 125 and then jumping on something like a 600 Bandit, which was about 3 times as heavy, even if it was on a 33 horsepower restriction kit, it wasn't ideal, but at least the longer training course needed to actually get to test standard and keep the examiner happy did lead to riders having a better grounding in staying safe than they get with compulsory basic training, which is all that's needed to get on to the road on L plates. The trouble is that the triple tier license system disincentivized these youngest riders from progressing beyond CBT, because basically the system as it stands at the moment is you pass your test on a 125, you get a full license for a 125, so you get next to no benefits. Yes, you can take your old plates off, yes, you can carry a passenger, and you can use motorways, but otherwise you can't do anything that you in terms of a new bike moving up in terms of performance or capacity. Now, this brings me to my third link. Now, just a few days ago, I discovered something called Project Apex. Sue passed me some information on this. I was already aware of it, but she passed me some new information, which was quite interesting. But this is a new scheme from Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire Police, which is aimed at 16 to 19-year-olds, the youngest riders, those out there on the 125s, on the CBT, who are, as the police say, disproportionately at risk on the roads. Now, one of Project Apex's founders, Pete Scholes, he told MCN, you do a CPT, but that doesn't provide any hazard perception training. Well, having spent more than a decade delivering CBT to several thousand new riders, I do think that's rather unfair on the CBT instructors, because we spend considerable effort attempting to provide trainees with some insight into just what will kill them out on the road. But frankly, we're sort of half an hour, 40 minutes in the classroom to deliver the sort of theory side of riding, and 2 hours or thereabouts spent out on the road ride. There's a really, really strict limit on how much experience can be delivered in that minuscule amount of time available, particularly as the road ride finishes what is already an exhausting day. So I think it's questionable how much actually penetrates the skulls of those trainees, but let's not be unfair to the instructors. Now, to my mind, if anything needs an overhaul, and this is where I think the NMC ought to be looking, it is CBT. It ought to be a proper foundation course which gets novice riders, I think, close to test standard before they are allowed out on their own on the road. Now, I know the NMC won't back that, nor will the Motorcycle Industry Association, which is the mouthpiece for dealers and importers, because they see a tougher CBT as a barrier to selling small bikes rather than a means of facilitating a better standard of riding. Now, I recall the same arguments that tougher standards would damage motorcycling when direct access was actually introduced in 1997. It was announced a couple of years earlier, and I in fact wrote an article, I remember writing it quite clearly, that I thought it would be a problem and that it would prevent many riders taking up biking, but I actually turned out to be completely wrong. Now, as I wrote a couple of years after DICE came in and the effects became obvious, what it actually did was it encouraged new riders into biking because it gave them a clear path from total novice through to qualified biker, and it particularly encouraged women to get into motorcycling. There are a lot more women in biking now than there were in the years before direct access came in. Now, the effect of the tiered license, of course, has been to remove that direct path. You can't come in at 17 anymore, take your CBT, carry straight on onto a intensive training course and come out with your license 5 or 6 days later. You are pretty much stuck on that 125 and with no incentive to go through to the bigger bikes. You have to wait till you're 21 before you can do that. Or is it 19? I can't remember. Anyway, then you can take the sort of the A2 test, but you're restricted to, I think it's 25 before you can take the big test. Somebody will no doubt fact check me on that, but because I've completely forgotten what the dates were, I forgot to note them down. But so rather than faff around with the complex alterations that the NMC proposed, which frankly were more difficult to understand than the existing tiered license system, which they say is confusing. And I did discuss this in full last year. Let's do the simple thing. Let's make CBT a mandatory 2-day course. Let's actually put a timeline on that course of 2 days, so that you can't do a quick scrape through on the minimum time on a CBT, that the instructors know that they have time to do the job properly. And if you really want to be radical, why not drop the CBTL plate system altogether? Frankly, instituting proper training to get every new rider on the road to pass the full motorcycle test before riding out there unaccompanied. After all, that's what everybody else in any other vehicle has to do. Now, I know the NMC and the MCIA will hate that idea because it will dent learner motorcycle sales, but it might just cut casualties amongst those learner riders, and it may be that the skills learned in those very first days are the ones that then get carried over to those more mature riders, who are the ones that North Wales Police say are killing themselves out on their roads. Right, so I'd be interested to hear what you think about what I've just said about the proposals from the NMC, Project Apex, and the safety campaigns from the likes of North Wales. Let me know. I'm always interested, I say, to hear what you have to say on these topics that I bring up for you. Now, what did I want to finish off with? It's the end of the show, so the first thing I just want to do is give a quick shout out to all my coffee supporters and subscribers. Charles Kittle, Gareth, he bought a book, thank you Gareth, Dave, Helen, Ian, Brian, Mike, NJ, Damo, Clive, Paul, Brian, Christine, Claire, Living Martial Arts, Johan, Mad Cockney, and Anonymous. It's quite a long list because obviously there's 2.5 weeks or so since I last ran one of these shows. You can be a one-off supporter or a monthly subscriber, and all you have to do there is click on that QR code. So if you do, you open up a month's access to the Survival Skills Archive. There are well over 1,000 better biking articles on there, and I challenge you to read them in a month. I think you'll need longer than that because the Survival Skills Archive has to be the biggest resource of better riding information anywhere on the web. And don't forget, if you want to get the latest articles, if you missed any, over the last 2.5 weeks or so, you can get them delivered in the weekly newsletter. The latest newsletter has just gone out on Substack. Again, the QR code there will take you straight there to subscribe. So, ELEVENSES is back on Wednesday and Sunday at the regular spot of 11 a.m. after my 2.5 week hiatus. So, thank you for watching today. Hopefully, I'll see you at the next show on Wednesday, and if you are out there riding over the next couple of days of our Easter holiday, do stay shiny side up. As I say, the weather doesn't look fantastic, so take care out there. And yes, thank you very much indeed, and I'll see you again in the not too distant future, I hope.